Welcome to the Among Lionhearts podcast, where we dare to have Moxie for what matters. I'm Michelle, and as a social media expert for nonprofits, it's my job to teach you how to get people excited about giving their hard-earned money for a good cause. At Among Lionhearts, we are your new loudmouth, change-making, do-gooder best friends, here to embolden you to take more action, risk, and heart toward creating a more just, equitable, and brave world. Today, we have a special guest here joining us. Tim Kachuriak from Next After is going to talk to us a bit about optimizing your online presence and just your holistic marketing approach. He is the Chief Innovation and Optimization Officer at Next After. And Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about Next After, how it got started, and your background?
Sure. Well, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, it's great to be here. As I mentioned, I was watching your podcast episodes like all morning, so I feel like we are like lifelong friends. So it's really fun to have this conversation today. My pathway into the nonprofit space is probably typical of what most people experience. I took a very indirect path. So my story is I graduated from college right after 9/11, which was a horrible, horrible time to enter into the job space, especially for somebody who just desperately wanted to work in the field of advertising and marketing. But fortunately, I worked at a country club all during high school and college. So I like to joke I had 432 aunts and uncles that were captains of industry. So first call I made was to Uncle Joe. So Joe was he was the president of the country club's president of the second largest ad agency in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And I went and met with him. I did my little dog and pony show, and he's like, "Oh man, I'd love to hire you, but you know what? We just laid off 30 people yesterday. 9/11 has hit our industry hard, our agency harder. Can't help you." And that was kind of my experience. So like first 6 months out of college, I couldn't find a job, right? And ended up meeting like this serial entrepreneur at some golf outing, and he's like, "Maybe you could do a few projects for some of these little businesses I operate." I said, "That sounds great." And he's like, "You know what? Why didn't you start your own business?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how to do that." And he's like, "I do. We've got an incubator on the first floor of our office building. I'll give you a desk. I'll be your partner. The rest is up to you, kid." I was like, "Sounds great." And I'm like living in my parents' basement, so I have nothing to lose. And so I did that, and I did that for about 5 years. Ended up kind of moving out of the incubator, learned a lot. We were like a general just marketing company, would do anything that would pay money, basically. I mean, everything ethically, right? I'm just saying, like,
right, but
like
whatever jobs
and like we did, print stuff, and then we kind of gravitated more towards digital. And this is like 2002, so like search engine marketing was just kind of like beginning to become a pretty big thing. And so we got into that. But I learned a lot, about like getting clients, keeping them happy, making payroll, all those things that you have to do to run a business. But I was kind of getting bored, because like I was always like a cause kind of person. And around that time, my church was actually building a new building, and they needed somebody to do like all the marketing materials for the capital campaign. I was like, well, I can do that. And it was cool. It was like the first time that I did something I felt like I was wired to do, like marketing, but for a cause I cared about. And I was like, this is awesome. And so I had this crisis of career. What am I going to do? And called a friend. He had just made a bold move. He like took this job at this nonprofit in South Florida. So I called him up, and it's like, "You should go check it out." And I went, and anyway, in a matter of 45 days, we sold our business, sold our house, my wife and I, and our 16-month-old, and my wife was 8 months pregnant. We moved to South Florida.
Wow.
I went to work for a nonprofit. So that was my first experience in the nonprofit space. And it was there that I learned that there's basically like agencies that work with nonprofits. I was not even aware that existed. And we work with one based out of Dallas called KMA Direct Communications, and their CEO, he's like, "Look, we've been doing direct mail for 30 years, and we're trying to kind of like move into this brave new digital world. Would you consider coming to Dallas and helping us start a digital fundraising division?" So that's how I got to Dallas in 2008, and ended up starting Next After in 2012.
Fantastic. So you guys you've been at the nonprofit space for a while, and Next After's been going. Tell us a little bit about the areas of focus for Next After and what your specialty is there.
Sure. Yeah. So Next After is really three things. So we're a fundraising research lab. We're a consultancy agency, basically. And then we're also a training institute. And as we were talking about before we started today, like, we do two types of research, both like forensic research and applied.
Yeah.
What forensic research means is like we're analyzing large amounts of data across the nonprofit sector. And what we're looking for in the data is patterns that lead to opportunities to unlock greater digital fundraising performance. So hyper focus around digital. We believe, like many, it's the future of fundraising, but as we all know, it's still kind of a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
The challenge, though, that we've run into with our research is that the kind of data we're most interested in analyzing either doesn't exist or it's not readily accessible, because what we want to access is the perspective of the nonprofit organization from the donor's point of view. That's the most important thing, is to kind of understand
Yes.
the mindset and where the donor is coming from and what they're experiencing when they become a supporter of the organization. So the best way to do that, we found, is by doing these different mystery donor studies. So as the name implies, we'll go subscribe to hundreds of organizations at the same time, monitor everything they send us, every email, text message, voicemail. We've got boxes of direct mail stacked to the ceiling. We analyze every piece of correspondence, and we wait for the organizations to invite us to become a financial partner by giving a gift. And when they do that, we go online to their website and we'll make a donation anywhere between $20 and $5,000, and continue to monitor how they communicate with us. And it gives us kind of a perspective for like what the donors are experiencing. And we learn a lot. We see a lot of like interesting things. And we're like, okay, if organization A does it this way and organization B does it a completely different way, how do we know what works best?
Right.
So we take a lot of the insights that we glean from the mystery donor work, and we do applied research where we basically use the web as not just a channel, but as basically a living laboratory where we can run rigorous scientific experiments to try to understand what works and what doesn't. And it's amazing. I mean, we've documented about 3,000 different experiments. A lot of things that we find that work are so unintuitive. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay, so if you look at most nonprofit fundraising emails campaigns that they send,
Yep.
if you looked at those, you would notice that they're typically like lots of HTML, images, graphics, buttons. The logo of the organization is there. There's multiple calls to action. The copy sounds like it's written from a professional copywriter, because sometimes it in fact is. And the problem is, and this goes to kind of like the underlying meta theory that we've understood as we've done more and more testing, is that when a potential donor sees that in their inbox, all they see is somebody trying to market to them.
Yeah.
And what we found is that people don't want to be marketed to, they want to be communicated with, right?
Yes.
People don't give to email machines, people give to people, right? And so what we have found, and by the way, this is a test we have run with dozens of organizations. We've done it in different countries. We've done it in different languages. We find if you scrape away the marketing veneer, get rid of the images, get rid of the graphics, get rid of the buttons, and even rewrite the email so it sounds like it's coming from one human to another human, huge results, 2, 3, 4, 500% increase in donations when we've tested that approach. So it's a simple thing that everybody can do. It's actually a lot easier, to be honest. So it's things like that that just kind of continues to spin my wheels and get me more and more excited.
That's fantastic. I love that note about, people don't want to be marketed to, and we're so used to having so much noise in our inbox that, you see an email come in from an organization that you are supporting, you would love to do more for, and you open it up and it looks like a marketing email. There's just so much other competition for your attention that you're gonna maybe not engage with that. And we love to tell our listeners, the organizations that we work with, to start with the assumption that they're already on board, that you're not selling them because they're already on your email list. They already want to be involved. They're already a part of your cause, right? And that's a lot easier of a position to kind of write an email to somebody, is if you're assuming there's already this partnership with them.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes, and I think we do this not just in marketing, we do this sometimes in life. We're so kind of like insecure, and we so desperately want to be interesting, that we could actually do much better if we were interested, right? So instead of trying to go give everybody our resume and tell them all the cool things we do, it's kind of like just asking questions, getting the person to tell you about themselves and then responding. Imagine that, like that actually digital communications is a two-way conversation. It's not just about us like blasting people, right? So
yeah. And this stuff seems so simple and so granular. And of course, everybody who listens knows I'm a total data nerd. So when you're talking about doing A/B testing on the web and doing all the research and pulling all these these studies on the donor journey through these different organizations. Like, I think that it's so difficult for an organization sometimes to stop and take the time to do that. So the fact that there's a resource out there for organizations to have somebody do that, and not only do that, because when you're doing it for your organization and just your organization, you're only testing that data. You've got just this very narrow little window into what that data means. But an organization like Next After has this broad spectrum of what is working in different places and what kind of audiences people are talking to. And I just think you guys are doing amazing things. Awesome. Can you tell me what is like one little thing that you've worked with organizations that seems so just common, like, just, it doesn't seem like a profound idea to you, but it usually blows people's mind when you talk to them? Do you have any little gems like that?
Tons of them. Where to start? So one thing, and this is actually important for any single person that is involved in nonprofit fundraising, and it doesn't matter if you're doing it face to face, if you're doing it on the phone, if you're doing it through the internet. It's the same principle. There is one question that every single donor needs to hear the answer to, but they never ask the question verbally. And the question is this: if I am your ideal donor, why should I give to you rather than some other organization or not at all? It's a question that we have to anticipate and be prepared to answer appropriately. So, and the reason why that question is so important is because we believe that the nonprofit organization's value proposition. And a lot of people, like, I think, misconstrue what value proposition is. It's not your mission statement. It's not what you do. It's the reasons why somebody would support the things that you do, right? So it's very, 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 very different. So we did a mystery donor study probably about 5 years ago now. We should probably refresh it. We went to 127 different nonprofit organizations, and we asked them that question. We contacted them through 4 different channels. We called them on the phone. So we found the 1-800 number and called them and said, hey, I was thinking of giving a gift. Can you tell me why I should give a gift to you rather than some other organization or not all? We listened and we transcribed everything they had to say. We sent an email to them through their contact us form asking the same question. We messaged them on social media, on Facebook, direct message. And then we also looked at what their donation page had to say to answer that question. You know what we found? Nonprofits are not good at communicating their value proposition.
What?
They speak in tongue. They'll say it one way on the phone, different on the email, and the website doesn't have to say any of those things, right? So it's so one simple thing is to get your board or get your team together, or whoever is involved in your organization, and go and have everybody write out the answer to that question, and just have them list out as many potential reasons why somebody would want to give to your organization. And then the next exercise would be to go and actually score the appeal, like how attractive is that reason, and then the exclusivity, meaning like, are we the only people in the world that's doing this, or does everybody do this? Because if it's really appealing but everybody else is doing it, it's kind of like it's not that visceral, it's not that powerful, right? And then the final thing is like trying to get a way to communicate that message as clearly as we possibly can. Because what we found about value proposition, it's 4 dimensions: it's appeal, exclusivity, credibility, and clarity. And those are things that if you can get a handle on that, like it'll put you light years ahead of every single nonprofit organization that's out there. Because that's a huge problem for many, many, many.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I really love about having a great, unique value proposition that everybody in your organization is kind of on the same page. Like, at some point, they're going to say that to the donors, to the volunteers, to the people that you're working with, is that those donors and volunteers and sponsors go out, and when somebody asks them what their organization does, they say it. So it's one of those things that organizations can feel a little insecure about, because they're like, yeah, it's this, like, it's repeated and we've heard it a million times. Well, that's a good thing. If you've heard it a million times, it's simple, it's distilled down, it's unique to your organization. It's going to continue to capture people. Exactly.
And by the way, in that study, and this is actually very relevant to what you do with organizations, a third, 35% of organizations that we messaged on Facebook and we asked that question never got a response. They never responded to our question. So one of the reasons why everybody scored so low is just basic blocking and tackling. We're just not home, right?
Yeah,
We treat the internet as if it's like this, bazooka that we just send out things and expect people to go and like respond with their very generous financial contributions. That's not a relationship.
exactly. Yeah. And once organizations really understand that, especially social media, that it's about being social, it's about having a relationship, a person relationship. It's not about your organization necessarily as like, a corporation with all this. It's about being personable. It's about having personality. It's about, showing the silly little stuff that you struggle with, in the office that people would
Right.
laugh about because they're going to
Yes.
identify with it. It
It
humanizes
humanizes
you.
you. Oh wow, we said it at the same time. I told you
Yeah,
we're mind
exactly.
melding, Michelle. I told you.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. I think that is so fantastic and just such a great starting point for any organization that's kind of looking at their marketing and going, is there something that we could be doing better? Like go back to your unique value proposition and make sure
Okay.
that everybody's on the same page.
Can I
And
give
if
you
you're,
another? Can I give you
what's
another?
that?
Can I give you another example?
Absolutely, please do.
So the next thing I would do is go and give a donation to yourself online. When's the last time you've given a gift to yourself, right? And go
Right,
through the
absolutely.
process and just kind of make notes of like, like some of the things we talked about with value proposition. Are those reasons there? Does it show up on the donation page? What are the questions that I have to answer? Like how much to give, one-time gift, recurring gift? Do I have different giving amounts that I put up there? Like, do I ask this question? Like, do you want to make this a memorial of somebody? Do you want to designate your gift? There's all these decisions that the donor has to make as they go through the process of completing the transaction and just kind of get a sense for how much friction exists in my giving experience, because that is one thing that we found that kills online donations is friction. And
Yeah,
friction can be described as anything that causes psychological resistance between a given element in your donation experience. So it's anything that like causes you to pause or question or get frustrated because you have to keep clicking to all these different screens. Like that's not fun for the donor. So that's
right.
another thing, just to kind of, and these are exercises in really developing empathy for your donor and kind of what they're
Yeah,
going through, and that'll lead to some great insights.
absolutely. Those are some gems. All right. So let's talk about the resources that Next After offers to nonprofits, that are completely free and available for them,
Sure.
to use.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was maybe 3 or 4 years into being in business, and like something kind of like occurred to me. Um, Next After is not a nonprofit organization, but we're very much a cause-based organization. And we kind of like
Right.
discovered what our cause is. And our cause is to decode what works in digital fundraising and then to get that into the hands of as many people as we possibly can so that we can actually reach our vision, which is our big kind of, cause. And that's unleashing the most generous generation in the history of the world. Like that's the thing that like honestly is big enough and scary enough and like exciting enough to captivate my imagination for the rest of my life. And so we said, okay, well, how do we be generous as Next After, right? Like, what is the thing that we possess besides money? You know what I mean? Like, and we give to nonprofits. We give away 10% of our profits to charities. We give 30% to our employees in terms of profit share. So it's like, that's easy. But like,
Right.
what are the things that nobody gives away? Our knowledge, our experience, our competitive advantage. Like, those are the things that everybody guards so closely. Like, that's our proprietary stuff.
Yes.
What if we actually just share it with everybody, right? And so we started doing that, and we open sourced our entire library of all of our research. So every single one of the 3,000 different experiments that we performed is available on our website. You can go look at it. You can go look at the creative, the control versus the treatment. So meaning the A and the B version. All the data sets are there. There's a write up of every experiment. And then we said, wait, how can we do more? What else can we do? Because nobody's going to go parse through 3,000 different online fundraising experiments because you've got more important things to do, right? So we
Right.
said, let's do all the analysis ourselves. And so we kind of like started to meta mine like all of this data. And we said, look, we've tested 375 different ways of doing a donation landing page. We tested all these different variables. Let's create a donation page template that points out all the different things we tested and why this is a better starting place. Is this the ultimate donation page template? No. Is it better than most? Heck yes, because it's been
Right.
scientifically tested. So we have like templates, we have guides, we have ebooks, we do webinars twice a month. All of that is free. For those that want to go deeper, we have certification courses. We have 8 different certification courses, and they're everything from like turning Facebook likes into donors to email fundraising, optimization, landing page optimization, A/B testing for nonprofits, Google Analytics for nonprofits, copywriting for nonprofits. So it's like all these different topics that are really, really important to helping you being more effective. And it's all based on things that we've tested. So that's one way that we're just trying to practice generosity. Like you see my t-shirt, this is like our next after mantra. I don't know if you can see it. It says,
Love it.
err on the side of
Love
generosity.
it.
That's kind of like our mantra. So yeah.
That's fabulous. There are so many, like I'm on the resources page right now, and I'm just looking at, a few of the webinars and blogs, podcasts that you've got available. There's so much gold here. That value proposition, 4 ways to help donors understand why they should give. That one's right on, the front page of the resources that you have available. So it's a great place to start for any organization that, is looking to overhaul some of these elements, or even if you didn't think that maybe you need to overhaul some elements, maybe you should go look and just make sure you're on point, right? Exactly. This is so wonderful. Next After sounds like such a fantastic organization, and we are so glad to have you in the nonprofit sector and supporting people who are doing good. You have a conference coming up.
We do.
Very soon.
The Nonprofit Innovation Optimization Summit. So what this conference is about is like trying to get some of the best bleeding edge things that are happening in the for-profit space, like in digital marketing, and bring it over to the nonprofit space. So the conference itself is 2 days. We have a pre-summit workshop before. It'll run from September 21 to 23 in Austin, Texas. So we are going to try to do in person. We're crossing our fingers and lighting things on fire and holding ourselves and just hoping it all happens.
Yes.
But there will also be a virtual component. So we'll live stream the whole thing for those who want to attend that. You can register for that for free if you want to do that. But the in-person event is amazing. I mean, it's like, we try to make it like, I think one of the things that you talked about in one of your podcasts is just about giving people an incredible experience. Like when you go to an event, you don't remember all the details, but you remember like how you felt. Yeah. And that's what we try to do is we try to give people like something they've never seen before. So like 2 years ago, like last year we were virtual, but 2 years ago we were in Denver, actually at the Ellie Hawkins Opera House downtown. And
wow.
we turned the whole opera house into a circus tent. And our theme was like the greatest showman, right? So we actually had like a whole circus troupe, and like they did like acrobatics and stuff. And they were also like licensed mixologists. So they would like hang upside down and like mix drinks for people afterwards, which is like amazing.
Wow.
So it's like, it's just that kind of experience where, and like people come to our conference every year. They're like, look, I've been going to nonprofit conferences for 30 years and I've never, ever experienced anything like this. And like, that's how I know that we've done it right. So but I mean, topics will be all range, everything related to digital marketing. So like there'll be a session on like email, there's stuff on social media, there's stuff on like donor psychology, like how donors think, stuff on data and analytics. There's probably some inspirational talks. We have this magician guy that's going to be amazing. The search engine optimization guy that's honestly, we've been trying to get Will Reynolds. He's like so sought after. I mean, one of the top search engine marketing guys in the country, or if not the world, is going to come. So it's going to be a great, great summit. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. And I know you mentioned, and you couldn't be more right. There's a lot of nonprofit conferences and they're not always the most fun, I mean, it can feel like a pitch fest. Like people are just trying to sell you their services, and who's here to make my experience day-to-day better? Who's here to give me the insights that I need? They shouldn't just be for networking with other people who don't want to be sold to.
Right, exactly. That's one of our rules. Like you're not allowed to sell from the stage. It's like it is forbidden. It is forbidden.
Yeah. And I love it. I think giving people as many resources as possible, so that I think that's the best sales technique for everybody. And I think it works great for donors and volunteers as well. Like, give them as much as you can of your organization, to help them in their own lives. They're going to fall in love with you. They're going to refer people they know, to the services that you're offering. And pretty soon you have whole families volunteering for your organization, and, the whole company, team coming to show up for volunteer day. It's those kinds of relationships are wonderful, but they start from trust and from people knowing that you are the organization that focuses on that specialty. So
That's right.
I love it. I love it. This is all absolutely wonderful. It's been a year. It's been a couple years. This last topic I wanted to kind of discuss with you,
Sure.
You said you went to South Florida in the early 2000s. And so that means you and I both weathered the market downturn down there. I was working for a 501c3 education K through 12 school down in Naples, Florida, back in 2007 to 2012. And, that first year that I was there was so strong. And then we saw layoffs, and we saw, donors leave, and we saw families who had been so involved suddenly not able to be involved or needing to apply for the scholarship program. So we know that the economic downturn's been a little bit tough for some organizations this year. And what advice would you give to an organization that's had kind of a rough last 18 months?
Yeah, I think that this is an opportunity to just reconnect with your donors, right? So like, I do remember when I worked at the nonprofit organization, not only were we experiencing the economic downturn, but we also had our founder of the organization, who was very beloved by many of the major donors, passed away. And so a lot of the donors sat on their hands. We shrunk from a $36 million a year organization to 18 in less than 12 months.
Yeah.
And we were kind of desperate. And so what we did is we had this like little call center, and every single person from the CEO all the way down to the person that took care of, just keeping the place clean. We all took a turn and sat in the call center. We just called to thank our donors, and just to honestly just love on them and just talk to them. I mean, I had one conversation with this lady who was a retired school teacher in Miami, and she told me about this book that she wrote, but she never published. I was like, oh my gosh, I could, they're self-publishing now. We could. And so she sent me the book, and I got it published. I mean, it was just so many things that really, well, two things happened. Number one, we never asked for money on those calls. We were just there to it was just, cultivation, just love on our donors, thank them for their support over the years, say, I know it's a tough time, but we're just really grateful for all you've done for us over the years and everything. But two things happened after we kind of did that little experiment. Number one, it was the first month that we were actually in the black of the entire time that I was there, right?
Wow.
The only month. And we never asked for money. Keep in mind, we never asked
Right.
for money, but people would send in money, right? Because they felt appreciated, cared for, and loved. Number two, every single person within the organization was so much more fired up because they had this connection to their supporters, right? Instead of looking at them like this nameless, shapeless little number in an Excel spreadsheet, they became human beings to us. And that changes you, right? And all that jadedness of just constant, like you said, being through layoffs and everything, and you're just so in your own head, in your own world, you lose touch with other people. So that is a great thing I would say to every single person that's going through that within their organization, is just call, and or chat or whatever you need to do to just try to love on your donors. I mean, that's it. That's the best advice I could give.
That's wonderful advice. I think the most wonderful thing about that is that if you're in that moment and it's feeling tough at your organization, you might have had to make some tough calls this year. You might have had to, had a virtual event or not had your regular event as it normally was last year. I think that calling the people who support you just to have conversations can remind you why you're there, what you're doing. And in a moment where it can be really tough and really stressful and really hard to see silver linings, turning to your donors and talking to them about just day to day, how they're getting along, how they would like to see the organization involve them more. Those personal connections are going to make all the difference, I think, in your attitude about what's going on at your nonprofit. And it's just going to cement that connection with them for years to come. So great advice today, Tim. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and your expertise. We are always so thrilled to have wonderful people like you come and talk to our audience and share your resources. I think that the conference that's coming up sounds so incredibly exciting. I know you mentioned it to me, but I don't know if you mentioned it on the podcast that there's a Willy Wonka theme.
Yes.
So that sounds really exciting. It sounds like you guys do that fun themed thing, and you did it a couple years ago with the Greatest Showman. So that will be really exciting for your attendees. And hopefully some of our listeners can make it. And if not, they will hopefully join you this year for your virtual side and make sure to be to the in-person event next year. Here is our podcast in a minute for today's episode, our interview with Tim Kachuriak, the Chief Innovation and Optimization Officer of Next After. Podcast in a Minute is where we break down our usual episode into a brisk 1-minute clip for your busy consuming pleasure. Tim's organization, Next After, has been serving the nonprofit sector since 2012. Next After is a fundraising lab, a consultancy, and a training institute. He and his team have spent years researching data and conducting mystery donor studies, through which they've uncovered the secrets to engaging donors and increasing donations up to 500% by making impactful changes to your fundraising strategy. Tim shared with us that the one question donors need answered, but don't always ask verbally is, why should I give to you and not to any other organization? This shows us that refining your unique value proposition can be one of the most effective ways to boost donations. He also advises ensuring that you always respond promptly to inquiries that come through your social media, and taking the time to donate to yourself so you can fully experience being in a donor's shoes and building empathy for the donor's journey in your organization. Lastly, we want to encourage you to connect with Next After by visiting nextafter.com, take advantage of the free resources they offer, and take advantage of their upcoming Nonprofit Innovation and Optimization Conference, either in person or online, September 21st through the 23rd in Austin, Texas. Tim, was there anything else you would like to share with our audience today?
Just like never stop being curious. I think that that's like what's kind of cool about like my work is that I'm constantly like learning and discovering new things, and like through the nature of like experimentation and testing, we arrive at new breakthroughs. So I would just say stay curious and keep testing.
Absolutely. That's some great advice. Today's do-gooder hype up message is the greatest act of courage is to be and to own all of who you are without apology, without excuses, and without mask to cover the truth of who you are. That is a quote by Debbie Ford, author of Courage, Overcoming Fear and Igniting Self-Confidence. Lastly, Among Lionhearts is a socially conscious marketing agency where we specialize in social media management and influencer marketing for the unique needs of social enterprises and charities. Let our team of experts manage your social media workload for you so you can get back to doing more good. Remember, every small act of courage, no matter how small, is not actually small at all. You, my dear, are standing among Lionhearts.